questions. I've gotten questions back from a number of the panelists, and like I said, we'll be coming back to you also. See, I told everybody to use their microphone, and then I didn't. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself first?
Hi, I'm Paul Hansen. I'm the CEO of Covert Media. We're a PE-backed film production, financing, and international sales company. Go ahead, Sky. How are you doing? Good to see you.
Good morning. I'm Sky Moore. I am a partner at Greenberg Glusker. I am the author of a book called The Biz, which discusses the film industry. I am a author a columnist in Forbes, and I have a YouTube channel, and my tagline is "I marry movies with money." So I do the legal side. I always my elevator pitch is, I'm not an investment banker. I don't look for money. You bring the bull into the ring, and I kill them. That's what I do.
Didn't you bring your book last year?
I usually
do. It was yellow, right?
I forgot. I hold it up and say The Biz, but I forgot it.
It's still available on Amazon, though.
It's still on Amazon, yes. Very popular book.
My name is Zach Katz, and I'm the CEO and partner in an investment group called Raised in Space. Raised in Space, in short, is an investment group that is singularly focused on technology companies who are bringing value to the music space. I've been in the music industry for 24 years, music attorney, manager, founded a record label, and for the past 7 years I've been at a company called BMG, which is a major music company. The last 3 years of that, I was the head of the US company. So transitioned from content largely to technology investment.
So 24 years ago, so you actually missed the wild years.
I got the tail end.
So I'm Christopher Holland. I'm an entertainment banker. I make my living financing entertainment companies as well as movies and TV series. I got my start at the studios and the talent agencies, so I like to say that I'm probably one of the only entertainment bankers in town who will read your script as well as look at your finance plan.
I'm Greg Bedrosian. Great to be here again. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Drakestar Partners. We are an investment banking firm focused on the media and technology sectors. We have 10 offices worldwide. What we do and what I do personally is help growth stage companies within media and tech, usually on mergers and acquisitions or capital raises. Additionally, we do have a relatively stealth but powerful family office co-investment partnership where we deploy capital alongside some of our large clients. And additionally, I sit on the board of a music, digital media, and content-focused investment firm that focuses on deals a little bit smaller than what Drakestar would do. Not permitted today to mention the name. It's going to be announced shortly. But so can cover the spectrum from earlier stage up to the bigger transactions.
My name is Megan Jones, and I have to lean forward a little bit because my microphone isn't quite so high. I'm an attorney at Withers Worldwide, and Withers is a global law firm. We have offices in Asia, Europe, and the US. About a third of our attorneys are located in each one. I am technically a tax lawyer. I'm also an ex-investment banker who grew up in Silicon Valley and worked with a lot of technology companies back in the day. What we're seeing, because we have a real global focus in a lot of our business, is we're just seeing a lot of interesting transactions involving content creators and coming up with creative ways to deal with that on a tax and business front.
Great.
Oh, wait, one other thing.
Please.
Since we're talking about boards, I'm on the board of the Mr. Holland's Opus Foundation, which is a music not-for-profit, which gives instruments to poor kids. So I kind of get to see a perspective on the music industry through that, since I'm the least music-oriented, even though I have musician clients on the board.
Fabulous. Megan, we're going to stay with you. By the way, I am an active participant in the No Woman, No Panel movement, which I find by speaking up about it, it's good. Audience is much better diversity. We still obviously have work to do here on the panel side, but I know Victor's working on it. Megan, let's start with you. One of your colleagues here asked, what's the future of film financing? Why don't we include in that TV? And ask you to kind of lay out for us what you see as out there in the future, how things are changing in film and TV financing.
Yeah, and I'm going to broaden that to all content, and then I'll explain what I mean by that. When I think of film, when I think of TV, when I think of music, a lot of the deals that we work on, that's like part of it. Then you have things like, what about Instagram? The content, the celebrity behind the content itself has to commit to Instagram sometimes. So they have to commit to YouTube or whatever their medium is. So what I'm seeing, and I do more music, more TV than film specifically, is that there's more of a package out there, and I think the idea of what content is has changed, where we're tying it to a person, to a concept, to an idea, and how many different platforms can you market that across?
Well, we come right down on this very basic question of how you see film and TV, and for that matter, other content.
Sure. Yeah, I
changing.
mean, I was actually exchanging views before the panel started with some of my panelists on this subject, and I share the view that it's really a barbell. So on content financing side, there's and especially with the roll-up and a lot of the acquisitions of Disney and the consolidation plays, there's these huge 100 million, substantial budget plays that are funded one very distinct way. And then there's sort of the other end of the spectrum, which is the more independent-oriented content, and that could be music, that could be film, et cetera. And that's probably what most in the audience are focused on and living day in and day out. And that's challenging to finance. And I think a number of us on this panel have been involved in deals or associated with groups that help fund some of those businesses. But that's a totally different task than the other end of the spectrum, although the big blockbusters are, of course, what get a lot of the press. So as we discuss over the panel today, we'll probably end up talking about the difficult stuff at the smaller end of the spectrum, which you all are probably most interested in learning about.
By the way, can you lay out maybe one example that you think is a great example from the indie side of what you were talking about?
I can, but to get our panelists in here, I bet my panelists can even talk about a deal he's personally been involved in, right?
So, yeah, the latest film that I financed, are you familiar with Alan Moore, the famous graphic novelist who wrote The Watchmen, V for Vendetta? So I actually financed his first original screenplay a couple months ago. We had pre-sales, we had tax credits involved in the financing structure, but we also had generous support from the British Film Institute. So I think a major part of the capital structure, in addition to the usual players like equity investors and banks and tax credits, you have to have, government support as well is really crucial. In terms of where I see the future of film and television finance, I think it's changing. The pre-sale market is, I would say, very challenged. Some might even say it's on the verge of collapse. But I think it still does exist. But the name of the game is really risk mitigation. So it's filming your content in states or countries that have really are supportive of their creative community. I would say really looking to government support is a major part of that the future.
Take 30 seconds and walk us through this process. Somebody knocked on your door and dropped a script off, and you read it, and then you called this person, or how did it all break down?
So in terms of that particular Alan Moore's
or
project?
any other good example.
Well, so when we're looking at projects to finance, there has to be a script. It's important that there's also an equity investment, because in order to get the project rolling, you have to have talent. And generally, talent agents are, they want to see that the project is real. So you've got a director, you've got a producer, but do you have money to back offers for talent? And really, another key component is soft money benefits or tax credits. So having that, that's really low-hanging fruit. So that's how the project begins.
Okay. Would you like to comment next on where film and TV financing is going?
I'm speaking from a music perspective. I'm the music voice on this panel this morning, and I'll just, briefly share with you guys. The music industry, because of streaming, considers itself, at the very least, as being fully back in action. There was a very big dip for the past 10 to 12 years where the music industry had the bottom fall from under it. And because of streaming, because of technology, because of social media, there is now new revenue streams. So the music industry on the content end is extremely healthy and frankly, probably overvalued. If we look at music investments, whether it's buying publishing catalogs or master catalogs, the multiples that people are paying is absolutely insane. So from an investment perspective, this is probably not a good time if you are an intelligent investor to put money into music assets, just because there are people out there that are paying unjustifiable valuations and multiples. And then on the tech end, which is the focus now of Raised in Space, the music industry has essentially woken up, has taken a look at the past 10 years, and has realized that it has taken a very passive position when it comes to the technology that it has raised its value. So when we talk about Spotify, Facebook, Snapchat, it's finding itself in a position, frankly, of having to figure out some form of equilibrium between itself and these tech companies when it comes to data, when it comes to revenue splits and things of that nature, right? So the music industry, when it comes to investments into technology today, has woken up, understood that it's missed the boat the very first time around, and is eagerly looking to invest into what's going to become the next generation of tech companies that will continue creating new revenue streams. And that's where we come in as Raised in Space. We come in to really be the guide to both the music industry in what they should be looking for from this next generation of tech companies, while at the same time being the only investment group that the day-to-day hands-on guides this next generation of tech companies from a music industry perspective towards the needs of the music industry. We're looking to be that bridge and to be able to kind of teach both of them that common language. But again, content, valuations completely off the charts. People are investing into music left and right, in our view, probably unjustifiably, and technology is in this kind of rebirth with both the music industry and tech industry looking to find a bridge, which we are hoping to serve as.
So we know Netflix et al. Are investing in movies and TV.
Yes.
Are the Spotifys and Pandoras actually investing in bands and albums and music?
The short answer is the Spotifys and Pandoras are looking to increase their margins, right? They're operating on a very, very small margin that frankly is not sustainable. So they're looking to figure out ways to increase their margins. It's, to answer your question concretely, to take that path in order to increase margin is a little bit risky for them, because they risk angering the people who they get most of their content from at this particular point, which is the music companies. So it's a very delicate dance between, yes, creating your own content as a Spotify, but at the same time, and which obviously will increase margin because you have a different financial relationship because you're going directly, but at the same time, still being able to keep some form of a working relationship with who you're getting most of your content from. So that dance has not been figured out.
Okay. Sky, future of content financing?
Okay, I'm the pessimist on the panel, as always. I divide first of all, let's do feature length films, let's not call them movies, and then let's do TV. Feature length, we divide the world, or I divide the world into, if you're north of $100 million budget, if you're the Avengers, Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever, life is good. It's a theatrical experience. The ticket prices are gone up, so that's how the box office is staying steady. Attendance is going down, by the way, every year, even though population is going up, and this is a limited. What'll happen is it's going to morph into a more high-end experience, 3D sound, 4D seats with wind, and the seats move, and it'll become a very high-end experience. And life is good. Below $100 million, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble. You either are selling to the digital companies, or you are now going to the limited number of remaining standing distributors, some of which will not be standing by the end of this year, and you are begging them to release your film, and they are going to be asking for P&A backup, and they're going to be asking for no MG, and I have several films out with clients in the market, $85 million, $35 million, and we can't give them away. These are good films. One is a high-end animation film. One has a very recognizable star, and literally like the terms that were being offered are just unbelievable. So, and I've had films that that go out on 3,000 screens and generate $5 million, right? There's no bottom anymore. There's just no floor. So, and I've got clients that invest, think it's safe to be in P&A, and the answer is no. It's no longer safe to be P&A, even if you're out first, because there's just no floor. And so the key for anybody with films under 100 million is you've got to find equity. It's relatively easy to find tax credit and senior loans and loans against pre-sales, but you're going to always have a huge gap, and your challenge to everybody who raised their hand and said, they're trying to finance content is finding equity. And what my clients have been doing is selling credits. They literally, we go to the rich, the family offices, and we find people that like the industry and think it's sexy and fun, and we sell credits, and we sell main title credits, and we sell in credits, and we sell producer credits and associate producer credits, and we also finance films for the studios doing the same thing. I have clients that do slate financing at the studios, and I find that what I'm doing is brokering credits. It's hilarious. Like for $5 million, I can get you a main title executive producer credit on Men in Black, So anybody who wants to do that, just come see me after the show. For $1 million, I'll get you an in credit as an executive producer. All right, so, and I'm not kidding. That's what price is. Now you will lose your money. All right, whoever puts in the equity will lose their money because all the equity gets wiped out, like just routinely wiped out. and so the challenge is finding people who are rich enough or dumb enough to invest. And there's another problem is this on the tax side is that the losses, if you have losses, are generally what's called passive losses, and can only be deducted against passive income. So it's not even and people that are smart enough to have passive income, which is real estate, are not dumb enough to invest in films. So it's a real challenge. I mean, I will tell you that all the financing for a lot of the films I've been doing is just, it's rich people that just want to have fun, they want to have parties, and so what we're pitching is the sexiness of the industry. You get to get on set, your daughter will be in the movie, or get to get a credit, whatever we can come up with. But what I tell every client is, man, sell to the digital companies. Just get on your hands and knees, go to Netflix and Amazon, Hulu, whatever, sell to them, and you get it used to be a 50% markup, it's now down to 15%. Until, by the way, next year when everybody comes online, and it will go back up to 50% margin. So it's going to be a happy day to be selling to the digital companies, and I just tell everybody, get away from the theaters, go to the digital companies and just sell, like up front, do whatever you can. Don't make the film and then go to them because they love to pass. That you want to sell it up front. You could get it's more sexy to sell the idea than the movie. On the TV side, I'd say the same thing. I just go to the digital companies. Day in and day out, that's what I do. And it's just which one, it's which one we're going to sell to. But get your margin, get out. Life is good. You get your 15%, you get on and you stay alive and you make the next thing. And so and get a track record and do that. And if you're a first timer, I tell people get money from advertisers, get some traction and get on YouTube, show that you can get some hits. And advertisers are more than glad to pay for content if you can show that you can get some traction. So it's just a way to get started and get some cred, street cred, if you will.
So Sky, you've been super candid, so I'm going to take this opportunity to see if you can maintain that candidness.
Oh, I will, trust me.
So help me understand the differences between these players: Netflix, Apple, Amazon, Hulu.
Okay.
Who's good, who's bad, who's...
Well, look, so it's going to be an absolute party for the next 3 years. It's going to be an absolute total party because everyone's coming online. Disney, Fox, Apple, Comcast, AT&T, Warner. It's going to, in addition to everybody who's out there, there's going to be such competition for content. Content prices will go back up to the 50% margin where it started, and that's without a question. In 3 years, there'll be a bust. In 3 years, they're going to be the one-trick ponies will be, I think, bankrupt. I think they're trying to buy their way into a monopoly, and I don't think it can be done. I think that if you look at just the numbers are just ridiculous. But for 3 years, party, and as long as and banking it, absolutely. Now, in terms of, I think, to me, they're all, right now, more or less fungible. It's just who will pay, it's just who will pay. Other Disney Fox is a totally different animal, though. You're not selling to Disney Fox, they're doing their own. It's not clear where Apple's going. It's not entirely clear what their, vision is. The rest is pretty clear. So it depends on what you're, but I sold The Irishman to Netflix, and it's $190 million Martin Scorsese, film. So where's that? They have a whole, they have a remarkable appetite, right? And then I've sold them small things too. So it's they go across the board.
And is there a back end? Is there a downstream?
Never. No, you're out. You get your 15%. You lick your wounds and you move on. Absolutely, it's a happy day. That's it.
Reduces audits.
No, there's no audits, no back end. They buy out your participation. And Will Smith got $40 million on his last film at Netflix, and rumor is it's going up because they buy out the back end. So it's for talent, it's just an unbelievable happy day. All right. For content creators, it's going to be a happy day. And so, but you got to get on the gravy train of the digital companies.
Paul, does this future sound right to you, or?
I think it's pretty close. I mean, and the themes have sort of been hit as we've kind of gone down the line. There's this bifurcation, and this is specifically to film, I think, but this increasingly bifurcated world where you're one of these huge tentpole IP-based things, whether it's the Marvel Universe or Star Wars or whatever, and then there's everything sort of else, which, for lack of a better phrase, we can call sort of the independent universe. And for the last 20, 30 years, there's been this reasonably vibrant production and financing methodology and distribution methodology where you could pre-sell off the merits of the package, whether it's the combination of the director, the script, the cast, and you could enact what was effectively a really interesting levered model where the capital stack was very heavy debt collateralized by those pre-sales and the tax credits and a pretty thin layer of equity. As Sky hit on, what's happening now is because the pre-sale market is really atrophying, except in rare instances, the domestic distribution landscape is incredibly scary right now. So you're probably not pre-selling, like on a split rights basis. You're probably getting at best a distribution deal if you're lucky, but even that is hard to get. And so the result is the capital stack has inverted and gotten worse, and Chris can talk about this too, but like you have to raise and put in a buttload of equity to make an independent film right now in most cases, and that is not a particularly attractive risk profile. So if you're coming at from this, with a even remotely institutional perspective in terms of trying to get a return on investment on a portfolio of content, this is a pretty ugly looking space right now. And that's why, to Sky's point, the people who tend to be playing in it are in it for other reasons. It's not as a traditional asset class, it's because they're getting something else out of it. The love of the art, the love of the game, some credits, they like to visit sets, they want to learn, the red carpet, whatever, but there are other factors at play. There are those sort of home run moments where someone, puts in $2 million into a film and it's a monstrous success. I would say the odds of that happening are way worse than they were 10, 15 years ago. So even the portfolio effect today is not particularly attractive. And while a lot of us are pivoting, we're selling stuff to Netflix or to the other platforms, as Sky pointed out, it's kind of a cost plus model right now. And yeah, we're going to have probably a few great years where the plus part is pretty attractive, but from the perspective of a financier producer, you got to whack that up with the talent, so that whether it's plus 50%, plus 30%, or whatever, the incremental margin relative to your negative cost, you're splitting that sort of buyout, if you will, with a lot of people. So you have to kind of keep that calculus in mind, even when you are completely off risk when you're making a movie for a Netflix or something like that. To make that like a sustainable business is basically requires you to have either incredible volume or very low overhead and development costs in order to make that work.
And when you say pre-sales, foreign and what else? Or is that just another way of saying foreign sales?
I mean, there are rare exceptions where you're pre-selling domestic, but it's, to do that for an MG, unless it's like a VOD kind of title, there's very few, I think Sky made this point, there are very few places that are putting up MGs for certainly the theatrical window. It's, probably a huge package and a huge film where that's happening. Even just getting a theatrical commitment that's of meaningful note, meaning over 1,000, 1,500 screens, which is ostensibly a wide release in North America, that is a rarity today, whereas it was much more commonplace. And part of that is just look at the landscape. Besides like the big studio consolidation that's happening, the independent distributors who have the wherewithal to consistently release films on a wide basis, there's like 3 or 4. It's like Lionsgate, STX, A24 really doesn't go wide initially. We'll see what Solstice does as a new entrant. I mean, it's a Annapurna, the MGM Annapurna JV United Artists, which is really just releasing their films. They don't really acquire much. There are very few independent North American theatrical distributors left besides the small ones, which is those companies tend to buy completed pictures, so you're not borrowing against an MG or anything like that.
Can I add something else?
Please.
So I come from a different world originally. I come from Silicon Valley, and then I moved to Los Angeles. And every time I listen to people talk about film right now, I have to say I yawn. I'm like bored out of my mind. We have content creators that we represent who are doing these massively creative deals, and we have a creator who's in his late 20s with $40 million in cash. And he's built up a brand, and he's done it by being creative. And so I would say that, if you want to create, if you want to do some content, it's not just a movie versus television versus music. Like, what is your kind of core skill set? I would even say like designers who are creating young labels of like clothing, those are creators too, right? They're finding a way to express themselves. And we can even see artists that have clothing lines, right? We have Reese Witherspoon has a clothing line now. We have a lot of musicians having clothing lines. So part of it is just you're expressing yourself and you're finding a way to monetize that expression using the different types of platforms and the technologies that are out there. And then once you have that name, you can pretty much do what you want. One of the things we're working on is a company that has a product, and our client is only expected to just endorse that product and getting part ownership of that brand with a very creative venture fund who's, kind of incubating companies like that. So I think it's like getting out of these standard definitions. And when you listen to this panel, I walk away every time thinking, wow, unless I have $100 million, I'm just not going to be making a successful movie that easily today.
And talk a little bit about the financing of these other forms of expression and creativity. I mean, is it less to get into play in the tennis shoe industry?
So is it less? I think it depends. I think Sky made the point about, do some YouTube videos. I know that there are some clothing brands or makeup brands who basically start out only marketing online, and they find a few influencers, or they are an influencer who's able to turn that into an actual product. Financing, I think right now, I actually have like a printout, because I am from Silicon Valley, of like what financing is doing in the VC world in general. And it was up near the end of last year, but it's kind of dropped the beginning of this year. And every time, because I've been on this panel before, every time I feel like I'm saying the same thing over and over again, which is seed stage is having a hard time getting funded. And that's, I think, always the case. Whether you find money from family or friends, it's just getting it started. Once you get started and have a little bit of success, you can ask, like, we've got people here who fund, right? If you find a great company that's making money, are you going to give them money? Exactly. Once you're there, it's easy to raise the money. It's just getting it started. And that's where I sat in a mediation with a client who's very creative. And I was just kind of the add-on lawyer, since I'm not a litigator. And my client was facing losing his company, and he has a vision for it. And I, at one point, have to say, look, he's going to walk away if you make him make the changes. And if you want this company to continue, which, by the way, it's very successful, you're going to have to let him continue being the vision. So I think if you have a strong vision and you're able to execute, there's always going to be money there. It's just finding a way to start it.
Could the rest of you speak a little bit about these alternative platforms for entertainment, social media being the most obvious that Megan referred to?
I mean, I think that, again, from the music perspective, it's, again, dividing the world into content and into technology today, because there are so many people that, because of technology, frankly, that have now said, hey, I've been told I have a good voice, right? I want to sing, right? Or I feel like I can be a celebrity. I think there's so many people that are now gone through the floodgates that it's just overwhelming. So the threshold and where financing is coming in for artists is you have to be able to show that you've created something of value. Selling the idea, oh, I'm great, and a small group of people like me come to my show, it doesn't matter anymore. Now, if you can pass that threshold and you can show that you are creating music that people are responding to, and it's pretty easy to do so. I mean, there's a million different ways to get into a studio today. People are doing it at home, to create videos, to show your originality, to show that you're special. That the music industry will throw money at you left and right. It's absolutely insane. So that's on the content end. But on the tech end, it's very, very different because there's not a million tech companies that are trying to create solutions, especially for the music industry. That, again, that's the perspective that I speak from. And the music industry right now is seeing tech companies come and transform the industry. Everybody's hoping to have a piece of the next Spotify, the next Snapchat, the next TikTok. So that same threshold of show me what you have, frankly, we haven't seen apply to the tech end, right? We're seeing investors invest, frankly, just mindlessly into this next generation of tech companies solely based on an idea on a deck, and you have a tech company that doesn't really have a clear purpose and a clear roadmap to success, a clear business model, a clear road to adoption, and then you have an investor who doesn't really understand what it's going to take for a tech company to impact the music industry. So you really have ignorance on both sides, and we're seeing a lot of that right now when it comes to investing.
Other comments on alternative financing?
Well, I think social media is crucial for independent film and TV today. I mean, some of the future players, I mean, are companies right now which I think are really, have a lot of lessons that other companies can learn from. A24, Blumhouse, these are companies that are making films at a really intelligent budget size. They're making stories that are, if it's something you haven't seen before, it's a new take on something that you have. They're building a relationship with with their viewers a year, if not farther into the past. They're building that relationship and that awareness, which is in today's film market, unless you're near the Avengers, it makes no sense to buy broadcast and cable ads, billboards all over LA, because you're not going to get the return on your investment. But if you're building that that awareness and that relationship with your viewers ahead of time on social media, you're doing it at a fraction of the cost. And frankly, yeah, you might get a little bit of box office, and then you're also going to realize a better return on all your ancillary markets, going forward.
Is that part of the pitch today? Do people come in and say, support my film, TV, music because I have 500,000 followers on Instagram?
That can certainly be a part of it. Certainly if an actor or an actress has a significant following, that can help their cause if they're still going the pre-sale route. Or if they're talking to equity investors, you can say, well, such and such. I mean, I've got X number of followers. I've got awareness in these countries. In addition to how my past projects have performed. Yeah, I mean, that's a nice pitch to investors.
Hey, we're
just trying to lock it so nobody comes in our way.
They're trying to lock us in.
We have a question over here.
Good, excellent.
Right here. No, I'm just curious because I'm loving the panel, by the way. This is more unique because it's more candid than most of these panels. Having a content creator myself who's had films on Amazon, I can speak to kind of the doom and gloom of what the industry's like if you're not making Marvel movies, basically. So even with the top-selling film on Amazon. That being said, with Jones's comments about Silicon Valley and being able to kind of market in a different industry, I find Silicon Valley is kind of like Hollywood. I mean, it's the same kind of thing. Everyone's excited by their ideas, but I think maybe 1% actually become profitable. Most of them fail. So what I think what I'm hearing is that we live in a content war kind of climate where there's content wars right now. There's a need to feed the machine. But at the same time, basic law of supply and demand, when you overwhelm the supply, you devalue it on some level. So in some ways, it's we're sinking the Titanic, by flooding the market with supply. So how do you make money Blumhouse was mentioned as a really good example of something that's standing out. I question whether they're actually making money. I'm really curious. Are they sustaining themselves because they have
They're definitely They are definitely making money.
They're making money.
That's fascinating. I want to know more about
But that it's
the
a,
financial.
it's not rocket science what Jason is doing. And I don't think this is even a secret. I think he's making somewhere between 15 and 20 movies a year. They start at like $1 million, $1.5 million. They'll shoot, they'll test. If it warrants putting more money in, they will. They'll go shoot some more, they'll edit some more. And the stuff that warrants a theatrical release, when it's all said and done, they've probably put in between $4 and $8 million, which is nothing compared to kind of the peer group. Universal will take it out wide on a global basis, and their hit rate is spectacular. But the stuff that doesn't go theatrical is going through the Universal VOD system, and they're probably maybe not making money on all of them, but they're probably getting close to breaking even. It's a great portfolio.
Who owns it?
Universal.
And it's got a brand. It's
Yeah, and Jason has a first dollar gross corridor
Yeah,
that he
brand.
shares with the talent, so that's why he gets the big actors and directors to do it with him.
So can that be replicated by other people?
Yes, it could. Others are trying to, I've got clients trying to, like, why aren't, exactly, yes, it could be replicated.
I'd like to respond to your kind of broader point about Silicon Valley and just, I mean, it's the 800-pound gorillas in the room. I think it is interesting, though, that all these monstrosities, whether it's Apple, Netflix, Amazon, et cetera, YouTube, they've all continued to struggle to figure out their own content strategy. I think it's, they have not limitless, but like certainly substantial balance sheets and ability to, deploy amazing amounts of resources at this, but they don't really have, in most cases, a particularly well thought out or proven distribution strategy. Apple seems to be starting an episodic. They're really not even dipping a toe on the feature side, but we're yet to see what it is. They just started hinting at it. Amazon kind of came out of the gate strong, then pulled back, so it's still TBD what they're doing in terms of their original content. Obviously, they're licensing a lot of stuff onto the Prime platform. YouTube kind of had this false start on their YouTube Red Premium. They've changed the name, I think, 2 or 3 times already, and then they're pulling back from that. I mean, it's kind of fascinating that these companies that have
Facebook Watch.
Facebook does not have a clear content. I mean, Snap, which is all very short form, and now Katzenberg's launched Quibi, and we'll see what that is. But, there's no lack of capital in the cases of these companies. So I think it's very interesting to watch how they have been incredibly cautious in this landscape, and what the implications of that are for the industry. And I agree with Sky, like, we are about to have sort of these kind of amazing few years where everyone's tripping over themselves to just put content onto their platforms so they have something for people to watch, but the pendulum will eventually swing back.
I want to add something, if that's okay. Can I add?
Yes, definitely.
I would just add that there's a lot of failure sometimes in success, and there's a lot of losing money sometimes before you actually hit it big. There are a lot of companies who struggled before they became super successful, and so what we see kind of today isn't what it took to get there. There was one company, it was actually one of the early scans for cancer, and I remember one of the founders talking at a presentation once, and he said, we put in, between the 4 of us, $1,000 to start the company, and within the first year, you could have bought any of us out for $1,000 or less. And that man, when he said it, was a billionaire from that company. So, it's always hard. But when I think about who's succeeding, and this is just my household, it's anecdotal, it doesn't mean anything, but I have 2 kids. We now have these 2 big black things on the wall that I'm trying to decide what to do with, because no one was watching them, so I finally got tired of paying the bill for them every month. We watch YouTube. We watch Netflix, Silicon Valley. My son buys movies also on Amazon. He watches movies on his computer, including black and white, so he knows where to buy the cheapest version of every movie that's out there, and which movies you can't buy yet online, but that's where my daughter comes in and tells him where he can get it for free. So there are people out there that are doing an amazing job with this content, and it's just a question of how do you find a way to find your audience, right? Once you have that audience, then you can monetize it for tens of millions of dollars easily.
Is this piracy the death that the Bob Daileys of the world have talked about for 50 years, or not?
No. I haven't seen Game of Thrones yet because my daughter had finals, and so I don't know how to find it until she's ready to watch it. But that's the unusual thing in our household. We pay for most content, and I think a lot of people do now, too. It's easy and cheap.
Okay, right here, in
So
the middle.
I definitely, this is great, and I get the idea that it's going to be a party soon with all these platforms. However, somebody tells me if you're not an established name, and whether that's an A-list name, like Guillermo del Toro doing Quibi, or even someone who's had moderate success, it's hard to get in the door. So my question, this sort of goes back to what Megan was saying, is what is the threshold? What is, if I were to create a YouTube channel, what's the audience, what's the subscriber count I would need to get in and say, listen, I need some VC now? What would be, how do I get to that point? Because I know no one's going to finance me, even though I might have a resume.
Here's what I tell clients. Number one, I say, go partner with someone who's got traction. All right, and be happy that they get 50% and just shut up. Okay, that's what I tell them, and that's what I'm going to tell you. Just partner with someone who's got traction. That's all you got to do. And the second thing is find a niche that somebody else isn't in. And if I was going to suggest to anybody, it is creating content for VR, and in particular, training. And I will tell you that people don't think about that. There's not enough, but it is an enormous coming demand for VR, in particular for training, but I would say VR across the board, because there's not a lot of people doing it, and there's incredible content. All you have to look at is Dreamscape in Century City, or The Void in Glendale, or go watch or go play Arizona Sunshine. There's all kind of different games that are coming. It's just totally different experience.
Who's seen these?
I've seen them.
Okay, shame on all of you, right? You should all go to the Void in Anaheim, and what's the one in Westfield?
Dreamscape in Century City, and I would also say go to a VR game place and play, like Arizona Sunshine is one, just a fantastic.
2-Bit Circus?
2-Bit Circus, but but there's much better. But the VR is coming, and I would say get on that train, man.
I picked up my Quest this morning, so.
There you go.
Awesome.
There you go.
Right there.
The last panel, speaking to the power of influencers.
You mean the previous panel?
Yeah, the previous panel. They spoke to what appears to be some concern on behalf of marketers about brand safety. And I'm just curious whether or not the buy side has been giving more consideration to the integrity of the metrics that some of these influencers that are saying that they have the numbers that they do, whether or not that plays into your buying decisions.
By safety, you mean just basically the quality of the metrics in terms of inherent into their subscriber base and things like that?
Because I'm seeing like third-party platforms out there that now analyze that data. They're making quite a bit of money because they can actually go back to you guys and say, hey, look, even though this influencer has 4 million followers, are they real? I mean,
Right. I mean, and this is very specific to my universe, which is more in the production and financing of the content. If the two kind of things that we would intersect with this issue are either an underlying IP that we're making something based on, or one of our elements, whether it's a director or a star. And I think in both of those cases, you can use the data as sort of a sales tool, which is like, oh, so-and-so has this many Instagram followers and yada, yada, yada. But I think the thing that we would usually drill into from a diligence standpoint is what are the comps or the evidence of their activation? Because a lot of people do have substantial either followers, views, or subscribers, depending on the platform, but can they move them? And so like we're in post on a movie based on a book that has sold 34 million copies worldwide. But more importantly, the author of that book has continued to do live events, has a social media following, and can move those people to do things. And that's a much more interesting and validating metric, if you will, as opposed to just the data point as to how many people bought the book. Because if someone buys a book, it doesn't mean they're necessarily going to go to a theater or download an EST file or watch something on a VOD platform. But if they're going to events and they're engaging in social media, we can have with much higher certainty that they're likely to consume the content.
So it's just more thorough due diligence.
I think so, yeah.
You're doing great on the questions. Keep it up.
So I want each one of you to answer this, if you can. What could one of us present to you, not today, but ever, that you would be pretty excited about investing in, or passing it along to like, here's where you can get this money for this project, and not just what could it be, but like sort of what form should it be in. So, for example, like a 5-minute, iPhone shot, or like a professional camera with, full-on, 2-hour thing, the whole 2-hour thing, or the script, or, what would be the thing that would be most interesting that you would be like, okay, great, this is it, they've got it, let's go to the next level.
I don't do as much early stage stuff as I used to, but I'll give you the best answer I can. I work in a world of business models, business plans, and all of that. And so I think having something, an idea that you can articulate in one sentence, and then really kind of a business model behind it. This is my audience. This is how I plan to reach them. This is, the storyline. This is specifically what I'm doing, whether it's a technology, an idea, content. But the practical reality is that it's very rare that someone's going to fund an idea, right? We have a client right now who I think is on company number 4, and his investors are really pretty impressive. And most people could not do the business that he's doing because he's not getting it based on the idea. He's getting it based on the fact that it's company number 4, and companies 1, 2, and 3 were successful. So he's raised a lot of money, and he's doing fine. But that's really, that's what it is. It's some substance. If someone's going to take it to a friend or an investor or whatever, they need a guarantee. And whether it's that what Sky says, you partnered with someone who has a track record, whether it's that you have, when you talk about YouTube follower, it doesn't matter how many YouTube subscribers necessarily you have. Some of those YouTube stars are making millions of dollars a year just on the ad revenue alone. So something of substance that shows money that you can actually succeed and get them their money back. It's not a good answer, but it's an answer.
No, I mean, yeah, just picking up on that, I noticed a lot of what we were talking about up here on the panel. You get 15%, take it, be happy, and move on. There's an element of that, and following on your point, the reality is what most of us, and we all have slightly different roles up here, but what most of us do is package that really brilliant, really thought out, blood, sweat, and tears creative idea into spreadsheets and math that try to create, a return, and you all, the content creator, get X% of that. The more one can walk that through, find someone, as Guy said, find a 50/50 partner who's done it before. Find a friend or someone who has business savvy that can package that in a way that there's a model that an investor can they'll tweak it and play around with it. But it's not only the creative side, because all of us, I'll speak for myself, I won't speak for my panelists, while we're active in the creative world, we're financiers at the end of the day, and there needs to be a path to a roadmap that works in Excel. However boring that may sound, that's what actually gets a deal financed.
I think it's also just having, a really well thought out idea. So if you're coming to me with a project, whether it's a company or a film or a TV show, I want to see the script. I want to see, and I also want to see what's your vision for where it goes. What's the financing structure? How do you envision this getting financed? Who do you involve? Who are you involved with right now? Who are your partners? Relationships in this space, as you know, are really crucial. So, are you partnered with someone with a really strong track record? But really, yeah, it's coming to me with a really good idea and one that's very well thought out. And if it's a great idea, I mean, I certainly would love to help you reach it, or take it to the next level.
I'll just quickly jump in. I know people probably want to switch gears and have other questions, unless you guys are dying to answer this. But to me, and I feel like I'm speaking to a room of content, people that focus more on content than technology. As everyone on this side of the panel has said, of course, you have to come in, you have to have a roadmap, right? Roadmap to success, whether it's the business model, road to adoption, all those kind of things. To me, it's very simple. A lot of people come to us on the content side and say, I'm so frustrated. Mine is just as good as everybody else's out there. Why am I not getting the break? Well, that's your answer. Because your standard is just to be as good as everybody else that's out there. People that are getting breaks, in my opinion, this may sound naive, but this is purely from my own experience, those people stand head and shoulders above that. And it starts by looking at yourself and saying, am I truly better? Is what I'm going to show you in 5 minutes going to stop you in your tracks and make you think about it while you're driving home that night and again when you wake up in the morning? When you're in the content space, when you're on the creator end, if you're not making content that stops people in their tracks, you're falling short. And it starts there when it comes to content, in my opinion.
Skylar, your shortest comment ever.
I have no idea.
And Paul, you're going to say directors and others.
Yeah, or just some combination of it has to be incredibly innovative, and there has to be a validating aspect to it, either like a partner who's with you or talent who wants to be a part of it.
But nobody said an agent, but you all meant it.
No.
I mean, an agent doesn't hurt, and in certain industries, an agent is what you need, but you have to first get that agent, right? So you have to have impressed him and blown him away.
You had a question?
Hello.
Can you project, maybe even stand?
I try because I'm, one, soft-spoken, two, I'm really short. Not that that has anything to do with my vocal cords. Anyways, hello guys, lady. My question, kind of long, not really, it's just, okay. So my question is, at what point do people get annoying to you? Kind of on point with, kind of where he was going. You all came, we all come from like a small place, right? And you guys have managed to make it to this amazing level. So looking at everyone who comes up to you to promote something or sell something or whatever, or you're teaching someone something, looking at them as if you're looking at yourself and kind of what you've already done and what you've already gone through, at what point, is your advice to people who are going to be those people pitching to people like yourself, like looking back at yourself, going, at what point is someone really annoying to you? And
I'll cut you off now. I would just say it doesn't matter. I get really annoying. Sky, do I get really annoying? Yes, I've bugged him so much, you have no idea. So I get really annoying, and I have a mentor who said to me, he said, you're just like me. You push too hard sometimes, and 70% of the time that's good, and 30% is really not good at all. So you know what? You're going to piss some people off, so what?
Reinforcements of that? I know we got, okay, in the very back, you've been waving your hand, reminds me of 5th grade where I used to wave my hand like that.
Hi, my name is, this is irrelevant. My experience with the music business is Tower Sunset in the glory days, so that was a lot of fun. So when you were talking about A24 and in essence you referenced the Avengers, Mr. Music Man, would you liken A24 as a production company to the equivalent of Sub Pop and Marvel being Geffen? And secondly, I want to thank you for bringing The Irishman to Netflix. When I heard about it when it was at its original studio, I was so excited, and then I thought it wasn't going to come out. So thank you.
So what's the
question is A24 Sub Pop equivalent in this modern age? And like Brie Larson won the Academy Award for an A24 picture, did that launch her like Nirvana to go to Geffen, to Marvel, the equivalent?
I think the bottom line is there's always going to be layers. There's going to be core creatives. They're going to build and encompass a vibe and energy and a culture. And there's always going to be houses that are going to, hopefully, when they're well-intentioned, right, are going to house those creatives. So, I mean, yeah, there's always going to be subcategories that are being powered by bigger organizations. So I think your analogy isn't wrong in any way, shape, or form.
There's a question directly.
And to answer your
go ahead.
question about Brie Larson, so yes, Brie's manager is a friend of mine, and yes, after she won the Academy Award, a lot of phones, a lot of people that maybe would never turned her manager's calls earlier, they were all calling.
Yes, right in front of the man that just asked. Yes, you.
Thank you all for being here. My question, I'm wondering if you can just dive into the knowledge of it, the landscape for digital first content, and what the funding landscape for that is. Is it outside of the big players, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, basically like a zero-sum game for anyone else who's trying to enter digital first content distribution? And if not, kind of what's the funding landscape for content, digital content?
Can somebody shortly repeat that? I think I'm the oldest person in the room, so I don't feel bad about having hearing
Did you
problems.
mean getting into the game of being a distributor, a digital distributor, or utilizing digital distribution as kind of as your point of entry as a content creator into the world of media?
Correct,
The latter,
And
okay.
Who's getting, not necessarily who's getting funding, but what perspective do you look at? Through what lens do you look at that type of content versus theatrical releases, which you guys have sort of already talked about?
This fits with your tidbit idea that a number of you had.
Well, it depends, I think, a little bit on the format. Like, are you making a movie or are you making short form stuff? Is it, narrative? Is it, unscripted? It kind of just depends on what it is. But I think if it's, if you're trying to do a narrative feature, but you're going to go straight to a VOD platform, in most cases, you're making it and then you're selling it after the fact. So you have to just be prepared to basically raise friends and family money or whatever, and then see what happens after the fact. And then the shorter form stuff, generally, unless you're setting it up with like a studio, whether it's a digital studio or one of the, the cable platforms or whatever, again, you're financing, developing, and creating it, and you're probably launching it on YouTube and then seeing what happens. Again, I would say partner with someone who really knows what they're doing and can draw eyeballs to it, because you're competing with basically the universe at that point in terms of people putting stuff onto YouTube, and it's a little bit of a crapshoot, I think, to see if you kind of take off.
Do smaller budgets have a better chance of succeeding today because of digital distribution and tools? Or not necessarily?
I think it's hard. I mean, maybe someone has. It's hard to know the answer to that question because the data is so hard to see. Like, what are people really spending on particularly user-generated content or their own stuff, and then they're putting it up. Like, there's probably a lot of stuff being made. I mean, take this for what it's worth, but like, I think there are still 3,000 films submitted to the Sundance Film Festival every year, which, someone's spending a lot of money to make those things, submit them, and, the festival shows maybe 100, and of those 100, maybe 8 to 10 get theatrical distribution. So think about the odds of that world.
Are festivals still important? Yes?
I think for marketing and publicity, not for commerce.
Not for getting them picked up. Right there, your last question. Yes, you.
I'm just interested in the panel's opinion on short form video that's made for, like maybe given sort of full screen can do so well, and whether it will always be ad supported in that short form. That's the issue, is the users won't pay, or how you think that platform might go.
I don't think anyone knows. I mean, what Quibi or Wonder Company, whatever, what they're about to do is unprecedented. So I think we're all waiting to see, because they're spending a lot of money on some of this stuff, way more than anyone has before.
What's Whitman getting paid?
My vote is it's going to be ad supported and it's YouTube. That's my
Quimby?
vote. And it's.
I agree.
Yeah.
Can you do it in 5 words, Peter?
Sure. Well, what do you guys think of Legend M, this crowdfunded
Boom.
content finance company? Legion M, sorry.
Legion Dem. I think that's potato, but that's okay. Do you guys know it? Do you all know it?
Is it equity crowdfunding?
Yes.
I don't know it. Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know it, but I'll say, you know what, it's always good to try something new, and I think it's good to watch it and see if it succeeds. There's no reason why kind of mass market investors are less able to fund good content than anyone else.
thank you very much. Appreciate the questions.
Hey, man.
You guys were great.